Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon, streaming on Sunday, September 7th, 2025. Today we have a fascinating conversation in store for you about agentic AI. How many of us have been faced with the predicament that we have so many tasks that we would like to accomplish and only so much time in which to do them? I know this is a constant predicament for me and probably for many of you. Thankfully, there are some impressive agentic artificial intelligence technologies that are coming online to help us with that situation. So joining us today, we have our panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, and our Director of Scholarship, Dr. Dan Elton. And our special guest today is Rafi Qumsieh. He is the founder and CEO of Breakthrough Labs, and Breakthrough Labs is specializing in the development of agentic AI. So Rafi, welcome. You have a presentation to share with us, so please proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, and I do love the values of the Transhumanist Party, so good stuff. So yeah, as Gennady said, I'm the founder of Breakthrough Labs, and can you see my slides, by the way?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So our mission, in a nutshell, is to accelerate scientific discovery, preferably using AI, of course, and specifically using agentic AI because of its capabilities, or at least its coming up capabilities. We're based in Austin, Texas. Here's my email. Here's my the website if you want to go and take a look at what we do, what we think, how we see things, our vision, things like this. So let's go ahead and get started. So, AI agents have a lot of definitions, right? And, as the field evolves, we're still figuring out, what it means to be an AI agent. But here's a working definition that I think a lot of people in the field that actually build AI agents can agree with. So an AI agent contains the following components. So first is a system message, which you can think of it as just like a text that you set and prepend to the agent. You basically give it its persona, you tell it, what the agent is, what it's capable of, how to think about things, and think of it as like the main algorithm that the agent is going to use to kind of figure out tasks as you throw tasks at it. And you're going to specify there how the agent is going to choose and handle tools depending on, its incoming information. And then you have the LLM, of course, which is the brain of the agent, right? It's basically its thinking or reasoning engine. These are your typical, GPT, Claude, whatever all these large language models. And then very importantly are the tools that the agent can use. Well, basically, these are the possible actions that the agent can take. Do you want the agent to read files? Do you want it to be able to write files? Do you want it to search the internet? Do you want it to access a database or make a call to a service, like a journal or something to pull some papers, research papers, things like this. So there are so many tools, and there are websites where you can actually browse tools built by people, which is really cool. And you can pick and choose which tools you want to add to your agent. And of course, there are some other capabilities like planning and memory. And these can be framed as tools too. You can say that, hey, like, here's a service that you can call to make a plan or write a plan or create a plan. Or you can simply write a plan to a file and then, refer to that plan later. And of course, memory is a big deal for agents. We'll talk about this later, but memory is the next frontier, in my opinion. And I think even OpenAI, if you follow, you would see that Sam Altman is also mentioning that memory is the thing they're going to be working on, and we'll talk about this later. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea of what an agent is, and since I can't see you guys, if you have any question, please feel free to stop me and ask, okay? I'll be happy to answer. So here's a typical research process or a pipeline, right? You got the idea generation and literature review, then you go into planning and experiment design, then you prepare the experiment and you execute it, and then you get the results, then you do some data analysis, and then you write the report, and some people review it, and that that's basically a pipeline of how research is done. And of course, AI agents can help us along every step of the way, right? Almost. So I can tell you that for idea generation, for example, and literature review, you could have an AI agent go out and collect all the relevant papers to the topic you're interested in, right? Or maybe you have a research problem and you want the AI agent to, the AI agent has been trained on so many data, so a lot of data, almost all the internet, right? So it can bring some connections maybe you haven't thought about, maybe knowledge gaps that it can see that maybe it's hard for one human to, see. So this is one thing that agents can help in research planning and experiment design. Of course, you could tell it, what the objective is. It would go ahead and create an experiment, define all the tests you need to do, and all, the data analysis you will need to do, right? These are things that I think AI in general is capable of, with some guidance, of course. And then experiment execution, well, that depends. Is your experiment a wet lab? We're not still there yet, even though some companies are using robotics and stuff to do this and automating the process. But if your experiment is more of like an experiment that involves code or things like this, definitely AI agents could speed up the process, right? Because they could write the code, run the test, and report to you or things like this. Analysis also something that they can help in because they can write code, obviously. And, if you have access to the data, you can write good code. You have a good understanding of statistics and all these mathematical models and techniques. You can definitely write code. But this is something that I want to expand on, because when I say, they could do things, it comes with caveats, right? And they're still not perfect, but I'm just giving the general idea of what they can do. And then you have report writing, of course. They can write, this. Depending on, what you feed them, they can write good stuff. And then paper review, well, they can definitely critique and give you some things, but we still can't take anything they do for granted. And we'll talk about why later, hopefully. Okay, so this is kind of an overview of a typical research process, right? So, and how agents can help you in each part. Okay, so I want to talk about the work we're doing at Breakthrough Labs. So we're focused on two main avenues of this process. The first one is hypothesis generation, and the second one is data analysis. And I think for hypothesis generation, we want the AI to brainstorm truly novel and high quality hypotheses to research problems. I think for me personally, the most difficult problem for humans is actually coming up with a really high quality solution to a problem or hypothesis that you can test, right? Because it takes thinking outside the box. Now, we as humans are good at this, but can we even speed this up? Can we even enhance it? Can we collaborate with AI on, doing this back and forth where the AI could come up with something really nice and, we could say, oh, this works, this not. I feel like this is a really good place for AI to come in and help us. And the second one is data analysis. And ideally, we'd want the AI to be able to successfully run thorough analysis of complex data sets. And I say successfully because that is the main problem, right? So AI can write code, but a lot of the times the code is, there's a bug or something and the AI cannot debug it. And humans have to step in and actually do the work. And this is not good from an automation perspective, because we still want the human in the loop. We want the AI to report to the human, but we don't want the human stuck in debugging small, error problems or a library that's not updated or things like this, right? So this is a big area that AI agents need to improve in, which is actually successfully writing code that runs without human intervention. So these are the two things that we are interested in, and we feel so because these are the things that can be automated with AI and AI agents generally, right? And I'll show you kind of how we're working on this basically. Does anyone have any questions so far? Or are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so just a bit about me. Founder of Breakthrough Labs, we know this. My education is in math and physics, and I'm very interested in solving the mysteries of the universe. It's a really fascinating place. It's insane. And after I graduated, back then AI was not what it is now, but you could start seeing glimpses of these systems where you just feed them data and they learn from the data and they pick up the pattern and they start generalizing, and you could ask them something and they could predict something that was out of their data distribution. And I just thought this is really fascinating. And when the day comes and we can use this in science, imagine how much we can progress science. So that was kind of the thing, and I kept this with me as I went through my career. So I after that, I taught as a college teacher, teaching mathematics. I worked as an AI ML scientist at General Motors, and I'm also an independent researcher on AI. In addition to that, I tried some startups outside AI and science that were just fun. And this is basically kind of where where I spent most of my time. But when these LLMs became commercially available via APIs, that was my time to say, okay, this is the time to start actually building something on top of them, right? So, there's a channel on YouTube, 2 Minute Papers. I don't know if you guys know about it, but the guy's signature thing that he says, "What a time to be alive," right? Because we're really seeing some fascinating stuff. So yes, so this is about me, about my passion for AI and longevity. I have a few beliefs here that first, that AI can help us solve our most complex problems. I have no doubt about this. It's going to happen. I mean, it's happening, but how it happens, there's so many ways, but I do believe that. I believe that the study of AI is fascinating, and it is a study of nature itself, because even humans, right? Because we're learning about the world and we're kind of condensing and storing this, what we observe in this nature and universe in our heads, and somehow what's in the models inside our heads are actually a reflection of reality, right? In some ways. So this is really fascinating. And then the belief that existence can be beautiful, right? And it's our collective duty to ensure that it is for everyone and everything, that it is beautiful, right? So, and I feel like this probably connects with the transhumanist beliefs, right? Because we can do that. We're strong enough. We're smart enough to. So, and now we have beautiful tools, so we can't complain. We just got to do it. So, okay, so this is about me a bit, but now let's go back to talking about what we do at Breakthrough Labs, which is accelerating hypothesis generation and data analysis, right? And so we'll begin with hypothesis generation. So the main thesis here on why this would work, why would AI help us generate new hypotheses and things that are actually out of the box? Well, the main thesis here is that these large language models are informational gold mines, because they've seen a lot of concepts and connections between them, right? They've seen so many things on the internet, and they're not simply just dumbly storing information. There's actually a lot of abstractions happening inside, right? A lot of analogies, just based on the architecture itself, right? And then they are generative, which means they can generate new ideas. Now, when we say generative, right, they can generate all kinds of things. So they're not necessarily brute forcing all knowledge. They're actually picking things that are plausible, but they still have their own problems, as you know, hallucinations. And so we need to kind of put guards against these hallucinations. And it's still an active area of research, how to mitigate hallucinations. We don't know if we can actually do it with the current LLMs, but there are ways around it. Okay, so yeah, we still have to review ideas for now. Okay, so how can we mine these models, though, to extract insights, right? How can we model them to extract new hypotheses? Well, you can do all kinds of prompting techniques. You can even employ some search and optimization concepts Because you can think of it as, we're searching the internal model or the internal knowledge of these large language models to find, golden nuggets or whatever. Now, for data analysis, the rationale is really simple. Well, there's way more data than insights, right? If you think about the amount of data that exists in this world, it's insane. I mean, it's not that exists in this world, that is actually stored, unused. It's insane. And there must be ways to kind of extract insights from. So a lot of these data and, and especially in biopharma and stuff like this, it's really expensive. And so it would be a waste just to kind of have the data sitting. We need to kind of mine them as much as possible, right? And AI agents would be ideal for it, because you release an AI agent, it doesn't get tired, it just keeps going. Hopefully, if it's functioning properly, would really get you a lot of good insights. And so we kind of want to go from this data, a lot of data more than insights, to kind of data to insights. Not a one-to-one, obviously. Some data won't contain insights, but you get the point. Okay, so for us, we want to apply them in what are applications that we can do. Well, we are personally interested in these. Biopharma, obviously, a lot of potential. You can save lives, you can remove pain, minimize suffering, all these nice things that you can help with. Fusion, we need clean energy, we need good energy. And, we want to move away from coal and, all these gas and whatnot. Oil. So fusion would be really nice and it's a very active area of research, fusion. So AI could step in and help us generate new material, new designs, even for reactors and stuff, maybe to optimize certain, even AI could be used to kind of decide how to configure these fusion chambers to maximize, the possible probability of having a fusion or something. Longevity is a big thing that I love. Obviously, we all want to live longer and healthier. And I think, as you guys agree, death is horrible and it's tough. And if we can push it further, that'd be really cool. Consciousness studies. Consciousness is fascinating, and it gets really meta and philosophical. So it's really nice to kind of think about consciousness and how it works and stuff. And philosophy, of course, coming up with cool ideas and things like that. And I'm talking about hypothesis generation with philosophy and consciousness mostly. Okay, so the current focus for our lab. So spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, so you have these cool systems, where do you want to go with them? Which kind of problems do you want to solve? And I think repurposing drugs is something that I'm actually currently passionate about. For two main reasons, because it does address inefficiencies, right? There's a lot of already approved drugs. They can be used for different indications, but we don't know. Maybe, no one spent the time to sit down and think. There's a lot of people doing it, but maybe AI could step in and show us connections or mechanisms of actions or targets that we didn't even think about, right? Because the AI has seen so many examples, so many ideas, so many thoughts, so many concepts and connections between them and whatnot. And because it actually saves lives and minimizes suffering. So especially in rare diseases, because the monetary incentive for biopharma is low in rare diseases, because the amount of people that have these diseases is low. And so they don't have incentive to spend so much research doing it. And so if you can repurpose a drug and help these people, that would be really awesome, So we're working on repurposing drugs right now, and I have to say I'm not an expert in biopharma. I'm learning this as I go, but I think that based on what I'm seeing, that there's a lot of potential there. So what's the progress right now for our product? Well, we have Aristotle is in beta, and Gauss is under development. So Aristotle is a hypothesis generation platform to generate novel solutions to research problems. And I can show you a demo of it at some point. And you have Gauss, which is the autonomous AI data analyst agent that analyzes complex biopharma clinical data, right? So when you have clinical data, you need to kind of extract insights from it and stuff. You would release Gauss on it, and hopefully Gauss will, report some nice insights for clinical trial managers and VPs and stuff like this. Okay, so just to show you kind of quickly what Aristotle looks like, you define a problem, kind of give it, the problem statement, if you want to give it an objective, and then a criteria of what the solutions you expect to be, what the solutions should be to your problems, or what kind of solutions you're looking for. And then here's the problem definition, and then you run Aristotle, and he starts providing you solutions. For example, this is a solution to this. This is something about hair loss, but this is the solution, gives you a score, rationale, process. And you can do so much with the solution. You can interact with it. You can expand on it. You can talk to the AI about it. You can see the detailed score. There's a lot you can do. So I don't want to go into the details. Maybe if we do a demo, I can show you how it looks like. But it's really cool. I use it myself, and I enjoy it. And we have researchers from Mayo Clinic using it for a rare disease that we can talk about later too. Okay. So yeah, just a shameless plug. Just wanted to say, if you're interested, or anyone watching, in trying Aristotle for research problem, feel free to reach out. Of course, I'm not charging or anything. I just want to provide value and see that actually Aristotle is bringing some cool hypotheses or solutions to problems. That would make my day. So as for Gauss, it's still under development, of course, but if you want to kind of think about what it does, well, you would feed it like, some clinical trial data for diabetes. It would go ahead and analyze the data, go through the whole process, and then it would generate a list of repurposing opportunities that you can explore if you want. And this helps biopharma kind of recoup some of the losses that, if the failed clinical trial happens, it costs like $1 billion or something, around $1 billion for a failed drug. So if you can recoup some of that, it would be really helpful. And so what are the challenges now? Well, there's a lot of challenges, but I just kind of put a few here. So for hypothesis generation, hallucinations is a big problem, right? So when I first started working with some researchers, the AI would come up with facts that actually don't even exist. And, the researchers were frustrated. We kept iterating and, building guards against hallucinations. And I think we have a fairly nice, like a stable version now that doesn't do that. But yeah, basically it hallucinates facts and uses them as premises in other arguments. And then novelty, it's really hard to judge the novelty of a solution, right? And also, novelty is one of these tricky things. Like it cannot exist in literature, but how much are you okay with, right? How much are you okay with? Maybe someone thought about it in one paper. Would you discard that completely? Well, it would be useful for another researcher to see, because they won't otherwise see it. So novelty is a big problem, but we're working on it to make sure that the solutions are truly novel and helpful at the same time. For data analysis, some of the challenges are, of course, I told you, coding. They still write bugs, and then we have to come in manually and fix them. Well, that doesn't work because it takes a lot of time from the researchers that should be spending their time doing something maybe higher level, And then memory, agents forget what they are doing, and then they go into infinite loops. I know people who build agents probably feel this. It's a real pain, because basically the problem becomes, okay, well, what goes into the prompt, right? How do you make sure that the agent doesn't forget what it was doing, especially for a long, complex task, right? Because most of our tasks are complex as humans, but we can mentally track, oh, I was here, I was doing that, I remember this. Well, agents can't do that. If it's out of the context, game over. So you need to figure out how to kind of manage the context, right? And planning, of course, agents do not handle long-term plans well. There are a lot of hacks that people are doing, but I think there's still a lot of work to do in planning. And this is also an active area of research for us at Breakthrough Labs. Okay. So this is just, I was just talking about us mainly and, the problems we face and stuff. But since, Gennady, you asked me to kind of mention a bit about the state of AI agents, I thought I'd conclude a few slides kind of just to show you. So there's a lot of projects actually, and a lot of academic projects that are working on AI for science, which is really fascinating. But everyone's doing it separately, and it's not being pushed like in a direction where it's actually becoming more systematic maybe, or including industry in it, or we need a way to kind of make sure that everyone's pushing towards the same thing in a way, not just separate individual efforts. So I can tell you that Google is doing great work. So they have the co-scientist agentic like flow that you can go and look at it. But basically, it's an agentic system. It's a bunch of AI agents that you give it a research problem, and it does literature review. It comes up with hypotheses. It even has like a tournament of hypotheses where they match against each other and they discuss it, the agents, and then they choose one and then they write a report, blah, blah, blah. So it's really nice. It's really nice. And actually, I think they released it this year, if I'm not mistaken. And what they're doing is they're working with researchers. It's Google. They have access to a lot of, institutions and stuff. And they did come up with a repurposing opportunity that, of course, they still need to test in clinical trials. And actually, one cool thing that they did was they were trying to figure out a mechanism for antibiotic resistance, right? And so they worked with researchers. The researchers already have like a good hypothesis that they tested, a good theory, let's call it, about antibiotic resistance. So, but then they gave the AI that doesn't know about this because it wasn't published, the information. They gave the AI the same problem, and the AI ended up on the same conclusion as these guys. So we know that it works for some things, right? It does work. It's just knowing how to use it and things like this. So this was really cool by Google's co-scientists. You can read on their website. You have Future House too. It's a nonprofit that's building a platform for AI agents to automate the scientific discovery. And then the AI2 Institute, Allen's Institute, that's one of the founders of co-founders at Microsoft, I think. They have an AI for Science nonprofit too that's building stuff. And if you ever use Semantic Scholar, if this is familiar, it's like a search engine for research papers. That's by them. They have code scientists, but I still think that all these systems still fail, and you will need an intervention, which is a problem. And there's many others. I'll show you in the next slide how many others are. So you can see here, and these are just from this source. I'll include the source at some point, but they did like a literature review of all of them, but you can see in chemistry and biology, material science, you can see there's so many, right? But until we kind of combine the efforts into one, it might be hard to see, what actually works and what not. And most of them, you still have to kind of go and test them in the lab. So this is something that we're kind of lacking. Yeah. So one thing that if you read the papers around agentic AI for science, they mention literature review. And I'm not sure why literature review is a problem. If I were to guess, maybe because, we're still relying on systems like retrieval augmented generation, RAG, to kind of, manage the knowledge of these AI models. And I do think that RAG is not enough for us to kind of, do all these memory storage and retrieval for these agents, right? They need a more sophisticated memory, and I think we're going to be seeing this soon, hopefully. I think these are my slides actually, so I can stop here. Maybe if you have a question or anything, please let me know.
Yes, thank you very much for that overview. I think this was a great presentation, and we definitely share the vision that you have for the future of AI to help accelerate scientific progress, including, of course, in the longevity field, and to improve human well-being. I'm going to show all of us here for the moment. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the ways that you have been able to innovate in terms of finding ways around the hallucinations? Because you mentioned there are approaches that could reduce them or minimize them. What are some of those approaches?
So before I talk about what I do, I think hallucinations are kind of intrinsic to LLMs because of the way we sample the responses, right? When we sample a response, we don't associate an uncertainty level with it, right? So when you say the cat and then it guesses jumped, right? When we select that, we don't include a metric of how uncertain the model is. We just say it is what it is, right? And this is kind of a problem because, this is one problem. The second problem is that they are probabilistic models, and some things, just because something is probable, it doesn't mean it happens all the time, right? Or something like this, like factuality and probability are not necessarily 100% one-to-one, right? So these are problems that I think they're just intrinsic to the system. So it's okay, but what we can do to mitigate that is we can put guards, right? So let's say you have an agent that generates ideas. Well, you can have an agent that kind of facts check as much as they can, or maybe go and do a literature review, or just go and find things that it could critique the idea, and then you'd have to determine yes or no on that. So that's one way to do it that I think is really easy, and it's like the low-hanging fruit basically.
Yes, thank you for that answer. And I'm curious also, you mentioned literature review being one of the main challenges for AI agents. And I've noticed for just ordinary large language models, if one can call them that, it's possible to get hallucinated citations. So that has been a pitfall for many users who try to, for instance, get some sort of outline of published research on a subject, and then there are hallucinated citations. There has even been a situation where a legal team tried to argue a case before a court, and the AI hallucinated the legal precedents. So what are some of the ways around that problem that you're aware of, so that that your AI agent is always citing research that actually exists?
Right. So with RAG, if you're familiar with RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, so it's not very efficient in my opinion. It's not the way to go, but you can include the link that the thing came from. But the problem is, with RAG, you're basically, let's say you take a paper, you chunk it into paragraphs, and then you store each paragraph. And then, when the user asks something, you try to find the paragraphs that match the query the most. The process is inefficient, but it does address the hallucination part for the most part, because you're literally including the link in the database. So it's not even an AI process. It's like just a database management process, right? So if the AI pulls a chunk, it's going to include the link with it. Now, is it relevant or not? Maybe not, but it does kind of mitigate that reference problem, right? The reference at least. But the problem with RAG and literature review in general is that, the context is, let's say 100,000 tokens. Right. So, but the amount of literature that exists out there is so huge, right? And so the question becomes, well, how does the agent have access to all this information? And how do you decide what information to pull for the agent to process at any given time? So it's a really tricky problem, because the way we do it, now they're using like something called a knowledge graph. I don't know if you're familiar with. It's more sophisticated tools to kind of like store the information of all the literature papers out there, but the agent still has to retrieve them and reason and rationalize about them. And so that's still a tricky process, right? So I think that's why literature review is really difficult, because there's just so much information, more than the agent can fit in their, a memory or context window. And we have to do the design as humans of what to bring in at any given time for the agent.
Yes.
I don't know if
thank
that
you.
made sense. I hope it made sense, but
It does make sense to me. Now, in terms of what we bring in, my next question is about prompting. So, one aspect of various large language models that I have encountered is that if you ask them in just a basic way to multiply two large numbers, they will
right.
give an answer, but the answer will be approximate. It will be accurate to about three significant figures. And it seems like every major LLM does this. But if you then prompt them to give a precise answer, then they engage some additional resources to do the precise calculation. So they have the surface level heuristic answer that they give you based on a surface level prompt. But if you tell them to do something that is more accurate, they will actually engage more resources to give that to you. And of course, for
Right.
scientific discovery, scientific calculations, you want the most precise and the most accurate answers
Of course.
possible. So
Of
are there
course.
prompting techniques that could get around kind of the rough and messy first approximations that the LLMs will sometimes give?
Yeah, but just to be precise a bit, I think with numbers, they probably use code to figure that out. I don't think they can, like maybe they can do some numbers, but when it gets crazy, I just don't think because of the way they tokenize inputs and stuff, I don't know if they can actually do numbers. But maybe with these, I haven't tested it with like these new models, you can ask it to think more and, it starts like doing more, spending more resources, like you said, to figure that out. But I think generally when you ask it to do numbers, maybe what's happening behind the scenes is that it's calling a tool, which is like, hey, I'm going to write some code, or I'm using a calculator tool to kind of input these numbers and run some Python code or whatever and bring you the answer. And that's why it's very precise. I don't think they can do it. This is besides the point, though. I think what you were saying is that, yes, prompting is, I think, when first the language models came out, I think there was a lot of research that was, I would say, maybe cooler than now. Now it's like, since things are more stable, people are trying to figure out how to use them and stuff. But before it was like, them prompting it, think step by step, and that's what released. That's kind of that was the inception of these reasoning models. After they told it think step by step, it started like producing the reasoning traces, and that improved the answer, right? And you guys probably know one of them was like, oh, my grandmother, what is it? My grandmother is gonna die if you don't think this through, or something like this, and it improved. I think it's fascinating, how much we can get from finding the right prompts. I do think so. I think, and there's a lot to uncover, right? I even think it's like more like psychology too, because it kind of thinks like a human, right? So I feel like whatever can. But maybe this is something we can use the AI to brainstorm. We can ask it about nice prompting techniques that we can use. Maybe it would give us something surprising, right?
Yes, indeed. And it seems that learning how to create good prompts is going to be one of the major skill sets for success in an economy and in a research ecosystem that has these AI agents, because we need to understand how they work from a conceptual standpoint. Even if we are not ourselves building them as users, it's important for us to have this high level understanding in order to get them to fulfill our objectives. So it's a very important subject to consider.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
Dan, Elton, do you have any questions for Rafi?
Yeah, I think this is very interesting. I might likely be getting into this sort of work myself pretty soon. And I was wondering if you've considered having teams of agents, because there's been a couple papers utilizing teams of agents where each agent has a specific role.
Yeah.
There was one that you may have seen where they designed like COVID antibody or antibody. So
Nice. Yes. So I think all the experts kind of agree that having a special, and this is even true in in economics, right? Having specializations kind of help the whole economy or whatever. So I do agree that having specialized agents helps, giving each one a role, kind of just helps the agent focus on one thing and do it really well, right? So you kind of limit the tools that it can use, limit the scope of its work, and it kind of becomes a specialized agent or a specialized expert in that thing. So I definitely agree with you, and I think that's what Google is doing, and all these Harvard is working on this, like all of them. But I do think that we need to improve the agent itself. I think regardless of which agent you pick, I think every agent should have a great memory, should have great planning skills, because these are things that you will need when you do, any task, especially in the scientific domain. Yeah, but yeah, teams of agents, definitely.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I also wanted to hear more about how the AI agents will do data analysis, because, is it essentially, because I've used tools like Cursor or AI Code, which basically allow the AI to look at files, explore the structure of files, and then write code to analyze those files. So I was wondering if your system is able to do stuff like that, and also kind of what are you able to actually, are the agents actually able to do kind of exploratory data analysis?
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, if you just give it an Excel sheet, I think a lot of, even I think OpenAI ChatGPT, you can upload like an Excel sheet and ask it questions, and it will do a nice job, right? It's okay. But when you start talking about, like, let's say clinical trials data, you have so much. First, the amount of data is insane. It's different kind of data, different sources, Now your agent has to engage in big plans before it can do that. And you have to remember, like, the agent is not going to look at every data point, just like a human doesn't, right? So if you're a human, any data scientist could tell you, like, when they look at a data, they do some exploratory work. Maybe they summarize stuff. Maybe they skim through some data just kind of to get an idea of what it's about. But you won't, like, look at the whole data or something. And so if you ask me, there's a lot of problems that are going. That's why, the Gauss is taking longer than Aristotle, because there's a lot of technical challenges that you have to overcome to actually get something useful. So the AI agents are not there yet when it comes to really good data analysis.
Right. And I was actually wondering about what your experience has been with clinical trials data, because I've heard that it's very heterogeneous. Like, if trials were conducted at multiple sites, it's not necessarily all put into one nice database. There might be, the data might be spread over many different files and different formats. And what's your experience been like? It's to the extent you've gotten experience with that actual.
Yeah, exactly. So I still haven't gotten I'm still developing toy data sets, just because you need to build the agents. But exactly. So if the way I think about it is, I think about how a human would approach it, right? And I think if we can mimic that, we're kind of successful. Maybe at some point AI agents will be smarter than us, but for now, like, if we want them, we should give them the things we would do, right? And so you could have a team of agents, like Dan said, which you have the orchestrator, and then you have the guy who does just analysis. You have the guy who goes and grabs, data or finds the data sources. Like, you can do this specialization, and I think this is the way to go. But in the end, you still have to kind of design the system around it, understanding, knowing where things are, knowing how to pull things. As long as you can put all this information into the context of an agent, I think it does a decent job into coming up with, a good next step or something like this, right? It's just kind of like managing the overall plan, a complex plan at this point. Like, it's really complex, right? If you're talking about clinical trials data, writing code clearly without bugging out, because if you bug and the agent can't go look up, it gets really messy really quick with coding. So I would say coding, just memory, knowing where things are, knowing what to pull, knowing where to find things, and planning. I think these three things, if you kind of like really come up with a high quality solution, I think we'll have awesome agents in every aspect.
Well, one of the interesting things about this paper on using the AI agents for designing the antibody was, I haven't gotten to read the whole thing, but basically they started with their researcher having a pretty long back and forth with the sort of main agents in this virtual lab, and I think what they were doing was really nailing down the plan in the back and forth. So instead of putting in like one prompt and then just letting the AI go, there was an extended back and forth. And
yes,
and I think working together, the human and the AI developed a plan for how they were going to design these, or how they were going to search through different antibodies. And also, so I think that might be how you can, that might be better than just prompting. If you're trying to get the agent to do like a multi-step plan.
Right. I do agree with you. I think the next step, actually, like the next logical steps, is to start kind of augmenting and working human AI collaboration. Actually, you get a lot of training data from this process, right? Because it shows you basically the human preference or the human thoughts. And if you collect this data, you can even fine tune the agents to become better, because they got feedback from the human, right? And yeah, I definitely agree with you. That would be a rational next step. For me personally, I'm kind of interested in AI in general, and so I just love thinking about these things, But I think that just like with programmers, AI didn't replace programmers yet, right? AI, the people are coding with, like you said, Gennady cursor and stuff like this. And it's already like boosting the productivity and things like this. So yeah, even for researchers, this would be the next step, right? Good point.
Yeah. And just kind of one other point I guess I could make is, AI and the LMs now can deal with very heterogeneous data sets. So in the world of like electronic health records, there have been very big initiatives to try to standardize all the data, and standardize all the coding systems. Like, for instance, they have the way diabetes, if a patient has diabetes, that could be coded in many different ICD codes. It could be coded in ICD-9, ICD-10. It could be coded in SNOMED. There's all these different coding systems. So there's been a lot of different people pushing to kind of get everything standardized into one system. But actually with LLMs now, it can actually work with multiple different systems. And so like if you say, go into all these records and find all the patients with Alzheimer's, it can work with many different types of, many different nomenclatures, many different coding systems. And so the need to standardize is actually not as great. And so that's, that's kind of a big advantage, I think.
Yes, it's awesome.
But as far as the, I've seen that actually, work in practice. But as far as like the data analysis, I've seen it work in a small scale with like looking, asking it model to do some, to kind of replicate or some results. But I don't know. I haven't seen it really at a larger scale yet. Like for instance, if you have, I'm wondering how you would approach like working with electronic health records and kind of doing hypothesis generation and using like a large electronic health records database.
Right. Well, this is actually the challenge, right? This is precisely the challenge that, you could upload an Excel sheet. It could, because it's like a simple, table with few columns. It can like attempt to understand it, come up with, certain numbers that it could, summary statistics, whatever, and summary figures and show you. But when it comes to bigger things, we still have to figure that out, right? It can do it. It's just about managing that huge data set and knowing what to bring to the AI at any given point, and having the AI kind of have a plan around it.
Yeah. What you could do is you could have it go through and look for like statistical associations, right? But then it also has to kind of do that in a rigorous way where it's rigorously tracking, like the false discovery rate, p-values, and all that, right? So it has to be. It seems doable, but that it could look for interesting statistical associations, but I have not seen anyone pull it off yet.
That's
it
exactly.
Also would require a lot of compute. If it's writing code, that's because if it's writing code, basically to pull down data from a database and then analyze it. And then it's doing that hundreds of times to check for different statistical associations. Like, there's probably going to be a pretty big compute cost too, right? So,
absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. It's an expensive process, and I agree with you. It's a difficult problem, and no one has nailed it yet, which makes it a really nice challenge. Because, I hope we agree that analyzing these data sets is like important and could be useful, right? Or can be important, let me say. And so we need the agents to kind of know how to analyze data for us. Or we could just have humans do it, but if you release agents, it's probably more efficient. They just keep going, do that. The costs are 100% with you. I'm with you. I think there's a trend towards having small language models being the agents. You kind of fine-tune them a bit to specific tasks to do them really well. And then they're small, so they're not that expensive. You can run them. But if you're talking about computing on the cloud, running, certain operations and stuff, I agree with you. There's some cost, but I feel like the value we may get justifies the cost, right? Hopefully. And we can always optimize. Once we figure out how it works, we can say, oh, this is a bottleneck. Let's try and reduce it, right? That's something I think humans are good at in general. But my question to you, do you see the value of like automated data analysis? Because I feel like there's just a lot of data out there.
Absolutely. Because I like here at the, I've been working at the NIH. I'm probably going to be leaving in about a month to start a new job, but I've been at the NIH and I've been looking at this data set called the All of Us data set, which is a large like biobank, which includes like electronic health records, genetics data, and surveys. So it's a massive data set. And if you look at a lot of the papers that have been published on this data set, a lot of them are just looking at a very specific question and then doing some statistical analyses. For instance, I'm looking right now, there's been hundreds of papers published. Like one of them I'm looking at right now, just randomly, what is looking at an association between low vitamin D and alopecia. So they went into electronic health records and they looked at all the patients who had blood tests for vitamin D and then they correlate that with alopecia. And there's tons and tons of papers like this. Another one, I saw recently was looking at the wearables data as well and looking at the correlation between number of steps and recovery after surgery. There's a lot of these different papers.
I see, like picking a certain topic.
A lot of these papers, I think they're relative. There's a relatively simple template they're following,
Yeah.
where they're like defining the cohort, isolating that cohort within the EHR data, and then running a bunch of statistics. And I've been thinking, like AI is almost at the point where it could basically do a lot of these analyses, right?
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you, actually.
In this sort of
100%.
research, there is sort of a lot of these papers, like I just said, they follow a sort of template, right? A lot of these
Yes.
like observational studies, right? So
Yeah.
and so I'm thinking like in the future, you could just have AI, do the entire study for you, right? And
Exactly.
kind of
And just like test these ideas, that people, because, maybe the researcher thought, okay, there's a relationship between vitamin D deficiency and alopecia, but it turned out to be wrong. Well, you had to run the test, right?
right. It's like I'm looking at like there's another one here. Association of e-cigarette use and psychological distress. There's all these different papers, and I think AI should be able to do this, and with the understanding that it is still an observational study, so there's probably going to be confounding variables. It's not as definitive as an actual RCT, but these sort of observational studies can be very useful for hypothesis generation, and then finding a signal that can then potentially motivate a more rigorous study. So
Indubitably. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I completely agree with you.
I think it's amazing, and I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, and
it's exciting, right?
Yeah. As far as the other topics, I think this is, I don't know, but I definitely within EHRs and observational analysis, I think a lot of it can be automated, even with today's AI.
I do want to ask you, actually. So the NIH, like, are they willing to pay for analysis like this, right? Because usually with anything, especially for science, you have to worry about funding and stuff like this. So I'm just wondering if you know anything about it. Like, are they willing to pay for this kind of work, automating the analysis or something? Because I know they have a lot of data, right?
Well, there's a lot of data in all of us data set. I think that we can talk about this offline like a little more, but it's sort of the data is all in the cloud right now, and it's hard to actually link an LLM and give the LLM access to that data, and researchers are not allowed to download any of the data.
Okay.
Machine. So the only way to access the data is through this researcher workbench, and it's sort of a walled environment where it's hard to actually get. I don't know of any way to link an LLM or.
It's super hard
to it. Yeah. So, but I think so that's one big issue right now. But as far as whether they're willing to pay, I would say probably they would be. They already pay for a lot from Microsoft. Like recently, they started providing licenses for Microsoft AI Copilot and Copilot Studio. Which is mostly for like summarizing documents that you have on your OneDrive and stuff like that. But they were definitely willing to. They've definitely been paying for AI from Microsoft, and they also, I know they pay for a lot of consultants and contractors to come in to sort of do like advisement work. So yeah, I think potentially, but I'm not sure how I'm honestly not sure if a lot of NIH researchers are really aware of really what can be done at the cutting edge right now.
I see. Yeah.
Probably a bit of a gap in just knowledge and understanding.
Makes sense, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. They're catching up to it, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
generally these big companies get, the big contracts, which is kind of sad because you want to kind of like give small businesses the chance to, do their thing. But I know the government has programs for small businesses too, to be fair. But generally the big ones get the big fish. But yeah, thanks for all the info. That's really nice to know.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's just a select number of scientists right now that are really trying to do this sort of stuff. But more people are catching on to what's possible.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it helps all of us if everybody's on board,
And I will point out, of course, often innovation does come from the small businesses or the individual researchers who are willing to do something unconventional and explore paths that have not been sufficiently explored. So that is where I think our virtual enlightenment salons bring value, because we help to identify some of these innovators and help them get their message out, as we're doing right now. Now, Dan, you shared 3 articles, and 2 of them you touched on. So this one is from Scientific Reports: AI designed mutation-resistant broad neutralizing antibodies against multiple SARS-CoV-2 strains. And here's another one from Nature: the virtual lab of AI agents designs new SARS-CoV-2 nanobodies. And interestingly enough, I have spoken for about 2 years about the need to create a way to defeat multiple COVID variants with the same treatment or the same vaccine, the same antibody, whatever it may be. And in 2003, there was actually a study that discovered a very promising antibody called E7 that worked against multiple COVID variants. But it seems that that study was not then taken further to develop a clinical treatment. But it seems there are other approaches, other possible antibodies that could be discovered or synthesized, including through the assistance of AI. And that, I think, is going to be necessary to get rid of this scourge of COVID that continues to affect us. We're in the middle of another COVID surge right now, even though a lot of people prefer to ignore it. The fact is that virus is not ignoring us. And then Dan shared another article, and Dan, perhaps you could comment on this one further. This is from Stanford Medical School. It's entitled "Researchers Create Virtual Scientists to Solve Complex Biological Problems." So, Dan, what else do you want to say on this one?
Yes. So that's the AI agents I was talking about earlier that that helped design the COVID antibody or nanobody. If I could share my screen, actually, we can discuss it a little bit more.
Do you want me to?
No,
I'll just sharing mine.
I'll just I think I can just share mine. So, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, you can. So you can see they had 5 different agents: principal investigator, immunologist, machine learning specialist, computational biologist, and scientific critic. And this is what I was saying before. The first part of it was just going over the project specification with an extended back and forth dialogue. I think the human actually talked to these agents for I think a couple hours, really nailing down what they wanted to do. Then they had these different tools that the agents could use, like AlphaFold for protein folding and studying the effects of mutations on the folding, and then Rosetta, which is like docking software. And then there were more meetings. And then finally the system was allowed to run, the entire team of agents was allowed to run autonomously. And I think they have another figure here. Yeah. It was allowed to run autonomously and basically designed a bunch of these antibodies, and then in the end they tested some of them in the lab. So yeah, here you can see like some of the tools they were using, like AlphaFold, Rosetta. It's pretty cool.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I just want to comment, like, the nice part is that if you put the combinations of, different combinations of different agents with different tools, gives you different, ideas or different processes or different approaches. It's like, it's crazy, the possibilities, right? And the tools you give it, the choice of tools makes a difference. If you give it access to AlphaFold and you tell it this is what it does, well, the agent, imagine the possibilities of what the agent. It's just, in the end, even if they're not smarter than us, like if they can automate and do things, just do more things for us that we just don't have the time, that's just, I think it's enough on its own at this moment, right?
Yeah. And then the other link I just shared is to a researcher named Daria Nutmats, and he's been one of the people kind of at the forefront of all this, really pushing AI, because I think a lot of scientists got skeptical of AI. There were when ChatGPT came out, I think there was a lot of hype around using AI for science, and I think what happened was a lot of scientists tried it, and then they were running into the issue of hallucinations. Yep. And then there was also, I believe, Meta had an open source model called Galactica, which really was a big flop. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And they had this big AI for science model. I think it was called Galactica.
Yep.
And
I don't know why it's
hallucinating stuff like all over the place. So I think, a lot of scientists have just become very skeptical based on prior experience, but they don't realize that the newer generation of models have really advanced a lot to the point where they're able to check their work. And I feel like, with the deep thinking, the models are much more careful about what they say, and they often will, if they're not sure about something, they'll do web searches to kind of check, the literature. And I feel like that, the issue of hallucinations has really declined a lot, to the point where I've almost never run into it personally. And I think maybe if you're getting into very esoteric topics, it could happen. But generally speaking, the models have gotten really better. And, a lot of the, anyway, I think people just need to try them out and keep experimenting with them, because they are getting better every year. It's not plateauing really, despite what a lot of people think. So yeah, Daria Nutmats has really been at the forefront, really pushing forward AI for science. And in this Twitter post that I shared, he talks about how GPT-5, he basically gave a very large data set to GPT-5, which was a series of metabolites from patients with chronic fatigue syndrome. And the model basically replicated a lot of the work that they had done even finding some associations in the data that took them months to discover. So he's got a couple posts on this. So, it's worth going through his feed and just reading some of his posts.
Nice. I just want to add.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do love Daria for this. I mean, he's just challenging everyone. It's like, just try it, stop. Here are some results. Bring in some receipts. That's really cool. And I do want to say, even OpenAI had him on their YouTube channel. One of the videos featuring him.
Yeah, I think he's really I think he's like an advisor to OpenAI now, or something like that.
Okay,
so yeah. Yep.
So he has stakes in it, but I mean, we can't say it's just purely monetary or something. Maybe he just believes it so.
You know what it was? Actually, he says he got an OpenAI Pro grant. So he got a grant from OpenAI for free ChatGPT Pro.
That's really cool.
But I also think he might have some other relation as well. So yeah. But always be aware of conflicts of interest, but I don't think he's like I think he's been talking about this stuff long before he got this. So
it's been consistent. Yeah, it's always good. That's really good.
Yes, I've seen Dario Unutma's posting on X for a number of years, and yes, it seems to me his messaging regarding the promise of AI systems has been consistent. Now, I will echo what Dan said about the importance of continuing to try out the new AI models and not just assume that they are stuck at some level of capabilities that they might have had a few years ago or even a year ago, because there has been significant progress since that time. Now,
absolutely.
Art Ramon, do you have any questions for Rafi?
Not so much questions, just some thoughts. I remember very early on, right where before RAGs became a feature, I remember looking up torque specs for seatbelt harness in my Nissan. And normally this automotive data, technical data, is behind a service, some sort of pay service that you have to get the technical data. So it wasn't really out there. So it was generating a lot of hallucinations on the torque specs of this seatbelt harness bolt. And I think I did some research first, and then finally RAG started coming out, and I told it, go on the internet, search for it, and it did find it on the internet because someone had posted this proprietary information on a forum. So it was out there, and finally I was able to get the correct torque specs for the boat. So I remember when that happened, hallucinations, and then RAG comes out, and it's a lot better getting information off the internet. And one of the things I've done is use projects, the projects feature in OpenAI, and you tell it to act like a certain type. I have like this investment AI, act like a professional stock trader, whatever, and then give it certain information. And I always use that project for my queries. It's like, I've got X amount of money to invest. What should I buy?
Nice.
And it's led me to some very interesting ETFs that I never even heard of before. So
yes.
I've been swing trading those, and it's done pretty well at that. Another thing I've done was a while back. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I did a query in OpenAI. It gave me some information, but I wasn't an expert in that particular field, so I didn't understand if it was true or false or hallucinations. So I fed it into Claude, the results. I said, is this true? And it pretty much confirmed that, everything looks right. So that's when I first started using two different AIs to check each other. And that I do that every now and then now, but ChatGPT's gotten a lot better. I don't have to do that as much.
So nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Even Google, do you guys use Google? It's like the AI search, when you type, now it gives you that AI feature thing. It's been really nice too. It gives links and everything, and it's free too, and it's really quick, surprisingly so quick. So
actually, I mostly use Google a lot. I used to use the Google feature that it would do a keyword search for you, and I think it would like check for it daily. And I used to use that to like track my name or certain things I was working on, and that was like an automated process. But I've done something similar with the newer agentic AI in OpenAI. So I wanted to know, when the Google Hub Max, which is a little device that you put in your kitchen, and it has a little screen, and you could answer the front door with it and do conference and do some basic search. Well, I thought the product wasn't very good, but I mostly used it for the doorbell answering. And I was like, I gave the agentic AI search the net on a regular basis for when Google plans on upgrading this with Gemini. And it's been checking weekly. And finally, it gave me a positive result. They're coming out in October with, they're going to redo the whole operating system in the Hub Max and integrate Gemini with it. So it's going to be a lot more functional than it has been when they do that. Because Gemini, I use it every now and then, but I pay for Open AI's ChatGPT, so I don't use it as often other than to check sometimes. Or I put in the same question into several different AIs and see who has the better result. Now, I remember one time I put in like an acronym of something I heard, and only Claude was able to figure out this acronym, which was interesting.
very much.
Yeah, and I'm trying to use the agentic part more, but I also kind of needed something interesting for it to do. Most of the times I could just do it real time,
Yes.
I do it query real time, but I'm trying to find more things where I can use the agentic AI to do things for me. So
yes, I mean it could be an overkill, honestly, for a lot of things. Like if you want to just pull a fact or something and a simple search, like you don't need to worry about this. But some things do require this agentic work. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but they have these new browser now, AI, right? Companions. They kind of want you just to tell it what you want, and it would do things in your browser too. So this might, help speed things up for you or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. They're saying that. I think I read it. Someone was saying that computer use agents are going to be coming out probably in early 2026. So, like I said, this whole AI wave is not plateauing. I mean, you're just going to keep seeing more agentic capabilities, and more ability to do longer and longer tasks. There was a study from one of those places in Berkeley, the meter, I believe it's called METR, and modeling and threat research, model evaluation and threat research. They have a study where they looked at the ability of AI to do tasks of varying length. So like tasks that would take a human 1 minute, tasks that would take a human 30 minutes. And then they looked at how likely it was to be able to do each of those different tasks. And what they found was that as the tasks get longer and longer, the probability that the AI will be able to complete it drops off. But what they also found is with each new iteration of AI model, like the the task that the longest task it can do with like a 50% success rate is basically increasing exponentially. So, with like ChatGPT 2, it could do like basically tasks that could take a human like 10 seconds. But then when you got into longer, more complex tasks, it would fail. But now it's getting to, like with GPT-5, it's getting up to where it can do longer and longer tasks. So, like I said, all the signs are showing that it's the scaling is continuing. We're moving towards using more and more compute, and the development is really not plateauing. There's always a lot of news articles coming out saying AI is plateauing. But when you look at the data, when you look at the benchmark data, when you look at the data from METR, it's not plateauing. There might be a slight plateau, while we're waiting for the next GPU generation to come out, the next generation of GPUs. But over multiple, it's really just progressing on an exponential curve, basically kind of like Kurzweil predicted. A little bit different, but because we're moving more towards compute rather than larger and larger models. But basically an exponential curve. So
that's where I've seen YouTubers say that it's going to replace a lot of entry level positions, because you can have that AI do all this entry level easy stuff. So a lot of entry level programmers aren't going to get hired now, because that's agentic AI is going to do all that work.
It's very tough for people that are just graduating college right now. I read that there's record unemployment among people who are graduating with CS majors. If you have some experience in data science or computer science, it's you might be able to get a job, but it's very tough right now and people are going to have to adapt.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like it's more on the policy side. People, like, how are we going to adapt? Because eventually AI will replace even blue-collar jobs. I mean, there's a lot of robotic innovations happening. So I feel like the conversation should be on the politics, politicians, policymakers, right? They need to start thinking about this. And I feel like these guys have no idea what's going on. It's like they don't represent us really, right?
Yes. And this is where the Transhumanist Party comes in, because we actually have some ideas about how to help people deal with an environment that is quickly being reshaped by AI and automation, including, for instance, solutions like a universal basic income or a decoupling of meaning from what one does for a living, trying to cultivate a more flexible skill set that will persist even with advances in technology. Our 2024 presidential candidate, Tom Ross, made this a centerpiece of his campaign, essentially helping people to discover their unique human skill sets that cannot be as readily coded or automated away. And I think this is actually a good bridge to my question for you. What do you think will be the human skill sets that will persist in an environment of widespread AI agents? Let's say we have AI agents in our browsers. Let's say we have AI agents that could quickly perform various tasks like hypothesis generation or data analysis. What do you think will be the human contribution to interacting with these AI agents that is not going to go away or become obsolete anytime soon?
If you're asking me, Gennady, I would say, I mean, it's honestly hard to tell. And the answer is that I don't know, but I can give you like hypotheses or whatever you want to call them. I would say the emotional part, maybe with the emotional intelligence, that emotional connection, maybe the creativity would still be, even though I really don't know, I'm saying it, but I really, when I think about it, I'm not sure, because I don't know what creativity is, right? But I do agree with you that we should decouple existence from what you do. Like, just because you exist, you have the right to a nice life and a decent life, and you can enjoy it without having to be good or great at something. And maybe the meaning is just to explore life and live it and see what's out there and be curious, and maybe space travel, hopefully someday, live longer, be with your loved ones. Maybe we can provide all these things, but we have to talk about also if robots become sentient, sentient also is a big word, conscious, if you want to say. If they become conscious, how would we handle this? Like, it's kind of complicated too.
Yes, absolutely. And we do have these kinds of conversations as well in the Transhumanist Party. We formulated the Transhumanist Bill of Rights version 3.0, which outlines a framework of essentially rights and how do we all get along if there are multiple types of conscious beings, if artificial general intelligence emerges and becomes sentient, or if we have even, say, uplifted animals, or we encounter extraterrestrial life forms, how do we have a framework of rights that allows all of us and humans and augmented humans to coexist peacefully and to benefit from that intellectual diversity? I think that's very important to consider. And having AIs now, and I think AIs that exist now and are going to exist for a while are still going to be tools, but the way they think, the way they generate ideas is a bit different from the way that humans think. And this will be good practice for us to become accustomed to what some have called alien minds, essentially, because in some ways they are already far beyond our current capabilities, but in other ways, perhaps we can go along certain paths more easily than they can. And there's a complementarity there, but there needs to be an understanding of both the capabilities and the limitations.
Great points. Great points. And I do love the party's just progressiveness, right? Just like looking forward. I think I do love this and I appreciate it. And I think there's a lot to be done. And actually, it's an increasing movement, right? You probably know about Brian Johnson, right?
Yes.
So yeah, Brian Johnson is very bullish on this, and I think he probably agrees with most of the values, if not all of them. And so he would be a good person to kind of help push the agenda forward, right? And even he was meeting with other celebrities. Now, I hate the Kardashians, but he met with them, and they help. If they say something, people listen. So it's nice to see the movement moving, right? But there's a lot of other issues we have to worry about as humans. Just the brutality of a lot of humans, that the way, you see these wars, these things, like, it's kind of crazy that we have all this tech and we're still talking about these things. It's kind of depressing a bit, but I have faith in humanity.
Yes, and actually the stream that we held last week was a compilation of my presentations from 2023, 2024, and existential risk, the idea of the great filter, the problems with all of these wars and other kinds of, let's say, political or geopolitical nonsense that we're experiencing right now were discussed. And the conclusion that I came to is, it's essentially up to forward-thinking people like us to innovate our way out of this, to provide a vision for a better world, provide for tools to help humans get there, to help humans realize that all of these age-old destructive ways of functioning are not serving us, and there are better ways to approach the future of our species.
Lovely.
Yes.
100%.
Thank you. So now I think it would be a good idea to see a demo of Aristotle. If you have the ability to share your screen again, I think it would
absolutely. Yes, and it would be my pleasure actually to show you guys, get your feedback too. Let me know when you can see my screen. So this is Aristotle, right? Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see Aristotle right now.
Perfect. So just basically here you have the discover mode or feature, and then the chat. If you want to chat with different AIs, you know how you guys were saying like sometimes you like to switch between AIs. Well, you can do this here, but the discover part, well, you can define a problem like we saw before. And these are some of the problems I defined, right? So let's look at this one, for example. I'm asking the Aristotle to brainstorm solutions for this problem, which is a design for a wireless charger receiver that efficiently converts received electromagnetic waves into electricity. Basically, I'm saying I want you to create like a wireless charger where I have my phone here, let's say, and it's being charged from a distance. Now we have the magnetic ones, right? But these are short range. So I'm talking about long range using electromagnetic waves. So I gave it the objective and I was like, this is the criteria that I want you to, so every solution you produce must have these criteria, right? If it's not, then I'm probably not going to look at it or maybe give it a low score or something. And so you can see some of the things. It must be compact, lightweight, and suitable for integration, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, you tell it, hey, go ahead and generate, like brainstorm. And you can choose the model that you want, basically. But if you open, so it generated some solutions. I guess this one, it generated one solution. But you can see the solution it generated, right? So this is the title. This is a description of it. This is the score it thinks based on the criteria, how much it matched the criteria. And then a rationale behind it, and then a process, right? And as you guys said, as the models improve, the quality of the thing, the quality of the solutions improves. And of course, let's open the solution so we can actually look more into things. So for example, we can read about it. We can see for every criterion that I set, it gives a score and a rationale for the score. So you can see as a researcher now, you're doing things a bit differently. You're actually like interacting with the AI's idea and kind of evaluating it at the same time. And then you can go down here and be like, oh, well, I don't understand what you meant by metamaterial and how would metamaterial do this? So you could be like, what are metamaterials? So it's another way to kind of research things, right? And then you send it would answer you. So not just that, you can also do a lot of things with a solution. You can create a detailed description, like a report. If you like it, you're like, I want more details on it. You can evaluate it, but it already did. You can refine it. Let's say it looks for knowledge gaps, issues, inconsistencies, and improves it. You can expand on it, which means, you know, you can take the concept and generate basically like variants of it, right? You can Google Scholar, that's too basic. Here is another thing you can do. You can refine it, but you can add additional criteria. Let's say you like it, but it did something, you know, you think, you know, you want to exclude, you can even refine it further. And so these are some of the things you can do. So I wanted to show you too that I was working with one of the researchers in Mayo Clinic trying to brainstorm repurposing opportunities for this disease. This is a very rare disease and it's deadly and it's painful too. So that's the problem with it, because what happens is that whenever you have a trauma or injury in some location, bones grow. Imagine how painful this is. So the person ends up with bones outside their skeleton. It's horrible. And so they're trying to find repurposing opportunities. And so we ran the AI and actually it came up with a lot of them. And based on the feedback, these solutions are not like the rationales are good. So last thing we checked was that some of them the researcher heard of. So that's the novelty part. Like you still need it to be more novel, but the rationales were good, which is a significant improvement from the previous iterations where it was hallucinating all kinds of facts, right? So yeah, I mean, I think this is what Aristotle is. You can define your own problems if you like. And I wanted to make it more social, where you can actually like comment. So different people can comment, have discussions. This way, like it's more of a social network than just, you know, just you interacting with the AI. But yeah, basically that's it. If anyone is interested in using it, just let me know and I will give you a token where you can actually like an account where you can actually use it. But you can see the AI actually gives very decent information. And I think one of these drugs is actually something the researchers going to discuss with their co-workers. So maybe they will take it to clinical trials. That would make me so happy. if this is the case.
Yes,
But yeah.
absolutely. So for those who are watching on YouTube, if you have any interest in trying out Aristotle, please make a post about that in the chat, and I will get your information over to Rafi. That way we'll have more beta testers for this very fascinating system. Now, I noticed it seems to be possible to choose an LLM, like there was a version of Claude available. What are the options for the LLMs that can be used?
So I keep adding. This is the choices. These are the choices that you have. GPT-5 has been really nice, actually, especially with brainstorming and hypothesis generation. I found it to be, for some reason, I don't know what they're doing. It's really nice. Opus is good. It's pretty expensive though, but it's really good. Sonnet is decent. Gemini with brainstorming has been 50-50. It's very critical of ideas to the point where, nothing passes basically. But yeah, I mean, you have different, and even for the chat, I use it to do chat. And, with security, I'm very iffy. So this doesn't store any information, right? So that's kind of cool. I don't have to worry about my data. You can download also the chat. So yeah, it's just, I'm trying to give you tools to kind of use AI to, boost your research efforts. And to add to this, some of the ideas that I had before about, let's say I'm researching AI, I'm trying to come up with a way to improve AI. And I asked the AI to brainstorm ideas. Some of the ideas that I had were actually part of the brainstorm. So, it might take you 2 months to brainstorm something, and then the AI just throws it at you, and you're like, oh, shit. I mean, you feel good and bad at the same time, right?
Yes. Well, it's really interesting that you can put in your criteria for what would constitute a good solution, and you can put in these parameters to guide the AI to essentially think in the directions that you would consider to be promising. But yes, I can see how you can put in an idea or the beginnings of an idea that you have had and have the AI take it further, expand upon it, provide more support or perhaps slightly different directions for it. But yes, this could really augment human thinking.
100%. And I can tell you that, so for example, this is a fusion thing. I was working with some of the researchers. They wanted, for example, they're always trying, because with fusion, the chambers get super hot, especially when you're using plasma and stuff. And so they want to come up with innovations on the wall itself, because the wall starts getting damaged, right? So what do you do? And so you can ask, so they asked the AI. I didn't follow with them after, but just because, they get busy and stuff, but it did come up with interesting ideas, actually, that I was like, what? Like, could this actually work? It's just interesting.
And these models are mostly they're basically just using all the internal knowledge they have, right? They're not.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering how that works. Are they mostly using internal knowledge, or are some of these models like GPT-5 doing web searches and that sort of thing?
That's a great question. But yes, off the shelf, I haven't done any fine tuning, which is another step that you can do if you want to go into this. You can actually fine tune it on the domain you're interested in.
If you're going into a very specific subject, like I'm actually very interested in the drug repurposing application. We can talk about that later, but
definitely we should.
If you're going into something very specific like that, I imagine it would be useful if the model either does a Google Scholar search, a Google search to find papers to read, or if you upload a bunch of papers, and then it can go through and look at, specific like binding affinity values and stuff.
Absolutely. And actually, I want to say this is a good use for an agent. So if you give it the right tools, like you shared with us, Dan, earlier, the AlphaFold tool, right? So imagine giving an agent like the right tools to go ahead and like research deeper into, let's say it picked an idea from here, it has a high score, right? From this FOP. And yeah, like you said, it could actually go and start doing the actual research, because this is right now is just an idea. Yes, you have a rationale and maybe it makes sense. You still have to go in and like prove it, using whatever you can find out there. So that's where using tools would actually, one tool would be like, okay, searching PubMed. Another tool would be, looking at whatever medical or like, pharmacy tools that are out there, basically. But yeah, you let the AI figure that out.
Yeah, that's basically what you're describing is the kind of like, I think where things are going in the future. So that's
hopefully, yeah. I mean, honestly, we need this. We need
tool use.
Tool use, yeah.
And then eventually, like I said, we're going to get computer use, where basically you don't even need an API. Like right now, you have to have a well-defined API, right? But a lot of older software and different software doesn't have an API. But with computer use, the agent will just be able to use a virtual map. Click go through.
Now, does it have a user memory, like everything, all your past queries and conversations? It's going to have access to all of that.
Which one?
Your model, your Aristotle.
Oh, this one.
Yes.
I mean, I actually thought about this. I feel like this is the product that people are missing, but it's being added, right? But where do you see the value exactly of like having like a memory of what you do? Because I'm curious to know if it should be added.
It's let's say like with me using ChatGPT, I could basically say, tell me about myself. And it already knows a lot about myself because of the past conversation. And it will actually make a pretty good summary of who I am from the past conversation. That wasn't present in the earlier versions of ChatGPT.
Right.
So, but yeah, that could be what do you call it? Not security, a privacy concern. Yes.
But it's nice.
How do you have it?
It's really nice. Right now, no memory, but you actually bring a good, I guess, direction for researchers, because I'm building for researchers more, right? Or people who like to learn and stuff. Doesn't have to be like, a researcher at an institute, but what you could do, so you could, whenever you give it a link or a paper, let's say you have a chat and you can add links, maybe it learns about every paper it saw, so that it can have a database of everything you fed it about your research, right? So this, I feel like, would be really useful for researchers. Some kind of memory, but it's not about you and your preferences necessarily. It's more about your research and what you've shown it. Because, you always have this paper, you're like, oh, I've read a paper about this, but I can't get to it. Well, how cool would it be if this model could just help you, search everything you've seen?
In ChatGPT, you could search through all your past conversations you've had with it. So that makes it convenient to find, I've already figured this out in a previous conversation, but, going through which one is a lot to go through. So I could just do a quick search and it'll come up with all the conversations.
That's nice.
Even without using that search feature, I could ask it, hey, go through all past conversations and remind me or summarize what we resolved in the past regarding this subject. And it could sort of do that. So,
I mean, it is worth it, definitely. Maybe that would be a good project for me to integrate memory anyway, because I do want to integrate. I think memory is a big deal, right? It's the next innovation in these systems. So maybe. For sure.
Yes. And I would say in terms of memory, having some sort of retention of prior papers or even prior hypotheses that were generated would be quite helpful. I'm reminded of Google's Notebook LM, which is different from other LLMs in the sense that it mostly operates on the materials that you feed to it, but you can have separate instances of Notebook LM which are essentially independent of one another, and they can accommodate up to 50 sources each, and those could be research papers, they could be pages from a website, they could be YouTube videos. So you could already get a lot of interesting connections among the sources if you have up to 50. But what if you had a system like that which also remembered past instances of materials that you fed into it, and over time you could have hundreds or thousands of sources in there, and it would be able to make connections among them? I could see how for researchers that would be immensely helpful, especially if they are specialists in a particular discipline, so they know about a lot of the literature there and they want to feed that literature into the model, but maybe the model could discover some additional sources or have some additional sources that would also be helpful and would interact with the sources that the researcher put in.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely agree with this. And I think these are things that the AI, like these models, shine in, because, you know, they can make connections between things if you tell it. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's wrong, but they can definitely connect things that I wouldn't say it's hard for a human. It's just, I would say it's not possible because of how quick they do computations versus us, right? They're doing it on a chip. They have all these huge data centers. You only have this brain, which is a fascinating tool, but it's still limited in that sense. They can see a lot of things and bring it to us, right? So that's really cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Some of these models like Claude are supposed to have very long context windows. So you can actually use the context window as a memory. But I think the way it works actually is it actually sort of summarizes some of it and just condenses it down, because
probably.
Yeah. I think Claude is supposed to have like 1 million token context window.
Yeah,
if you just implemented that directly, you wouldn't be able to do it. So they're using some tricks under the hood, sort of.
And there's a lot of research that it deteriorates. The longer the context, the lower the quality of the response. I think there's a lot of research on it because it's just hard to, you know. I mean, I respect what they're trying to do, and it helps a lot of users who want to feed a PDF or something. But there's a lot of research that's been done that, you know, it fails a lot of tasks, basic tasks, the longer the more context you feed it, basically.
Yeah.
And I think, you need to be careful about how, you know, what you feed into it, and you manage that properly and stuff like this. Yeah.
But there's a simple way of implementing memory is just, having a persistent context. But yeah, it's absolutely. I think in the future, there will be more sophisticated ways of doing memory for sure.
Absolutely. There's a lot of big players invested in it. So it's just a matter of time.
So what do you think it is that leads to this outcome? It seems counterintuitive. Like, one would imagine that the more information one feeds into a model or the more context it has, the better it would perform. But there does seem to be some model decay. And in part, it could be, let's say, an accumulation of errors if the model hallucinates a little bit in one response, and then it carries that forward and maybe amplifies it because it doesn't know that it's a hallucination and the user hasn't corrected it. That could be a form of model decay. But is there something else? Is there something more fundamental as to why a larger context could actually lead to poorer model performance?
I would say, actually, that's a very good question. I would say, just like on top of my head, maybe it has to do with the transformer architecture, which is what these models are built on, right? So every token gets mixed with every other token, basically, right? So and I say mixed because literally it's called the transformer, because these, like the representation of each token is being transformed, right? it keeps getting transformed as it passes through these layers until the end. And so imagine having like, one word or token, the representation of it or the vector of it or whatever is going to be affected by 100,000 more other variables or things, right? Now, of course, there are attention weights. It's not going to pay attention to everything, but imagine how many mixing is going to happen in between. So maybe they reach a point where everything's just so mixed up, like every vector is so transformed to a level where it can't distinguish between things.
This is what I was kind of getting at before is the transformer has a context window. Traditionally, it's something like 10,024 tokens.
Right.
And so as you're generating text and stuff, it's only able to see the last like 1024, or it can only see back as far as its context window.
I see what you're saying.
What happens is the amount of computation scales quadratically with the size of that. So, like as n squared. And so there are models that have like, quote, 1 million token context. But if you were to do that the traditional way, you wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't have enough compute. So they're actually, when they say it's 1 million token context window, that's actually a little bit misleading.
Yeah.
Because they're doing some sort of magical tricks under the hood.
Like summarizing, like you said.
That context. Yeah. So what they must be doing is they must be distilling that down into smaller bits.
That's fair. I mean,
what you were alluding to before is like if you feed in a 100-page PDF and it reads all the way through, and then you ask something about like what was on way back on page 1, it's not going to be able to answer that as well as if you ask something about like what was on like the last page it read.
I see. Yeah.
I think that might be kind of true.
That's a good point.
But
that's a good point.
The fact is, we don't really know exactly how they're implementing this ultra long context. But
I mean, summary makes sense.
It's not. They're distilling it down, basically. Yeah.
They are. I mean, that's what humans do it, though, right? That's how humans do it, right? We kind of read a passage, we extract a useful, we move on, extract, right? So, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. So, as we are approaching the end of our virtual Enlightenment Salon, I have one more question for you, Rafi,
Yes,
and then
sir.
I'll invite you to make some concluding remarks. And that is, given the proliferation that we're seeing of AI agents, including Aristotle and Gauss, which you're developing, but also the many others that you've mentioned in various disciplines, it would seem to be fascinating to have AI agents in the future communicating with one another and interfacing using their distinct architectures, their distinct ways of looking at scientific problems, just like you could have different human scientists, different specialists from different disciplines interacting with one another, collaborating on research. Where do you see the possibilities for that? How soon do you think we're going to have teams of AI agents working together on scientific discovery?
I mean, great question. And I do want to say that Google is actually looking into this. And if you've heard of the MCP protocol, which is
Yes.
just so it basically Anthropic came up with it. They said, hey, like this is how we think, you should define tools for the agent. It's a standard on how to define tools and define agents in general. Well, Google came up and said, okay, well, now we need an agent-to-agent protocol, right? And this is a way for you how to define your agent, expose it to the world, so that if anyone wants to talk to your agent, they would how to query it, etc., like authentication and stuff like this. So definitely something that should be happening in 2026. Seeing agents communicate with each other, and you're going to see people publishing their own agents, right? Even I thought, like you said, Aristotle could be exposed via an API or an agent-to-agent framework where someone could query Aristotle and get the solutions, right? Or Gauss in the future, they could give Gauss, point them to the data sets, and Gauss would do all these fascinating things. And maybe their agent is calling, right? The agent would be calling my agent, basically. So yeah, very forward-thinking, Gennady. I think you hit a very good point.
Yes, thank you very much. In 2026, that is coming very soon. So we are
Yes.
soon to be immersed in this fascinating world of AI agents communicating with one another, contributing to scientific research. Let's hope they help
Yes,
us
sir.
solve many of these pressing problems, cure some diseases, help us live longer and better. So thank you very much,
Yes. Yes,
Rafi.
sir.
And any concluding thoughts for our audience today?
It's been a fascinating chat, guys. Really nice. And, like I said, I'm a big proponent of the party. I read the values. I think I agree. It's the progressive movement we need. And, we should stay in touch. And it's been really fun.
Absolutely. And we look forward to seeing how your efforts progress with Aristotle and soon with Gauss. Let's hope
Yes,
that
sir.
they can be deployed to benefit as many people as possible so that we can all live long and prosper.
And prosper. Absolutely.